Well, sure, there you are now. Hi, how are you? Welcome along to episode 36 of Shelf Analysis. I know, 36 of them. If this is your first one watching, thanks very much. There's loads more. You'll be able to find them on the YouTube channel or, of course, on RTE Culture, where you'll find most of the older episodes as well. If you're watching live tonight in the Ricochet Book Club, how are you? Also, some people watching live on YouTube as well tonight, because this is the first one we've tried to simulcast. I found out this afternoon the software allows me to do it now. Who knew? So hi, if you're watching on YouTube live or in the Ricochet Book Club live as well. You can stick your comments, questions, all that kind of stuff in here as well for our guest tonight, as per usual. Quick bit of housekeeping. Next week's Shelf Analysis, same night of the week. It is going to be at 8 p.m. It is going to be live, and it's going to be the last one until September. Month of August, I'm gone. I'm gone in every sense of the word, really. I've been gone for quite some time now. It's just something I'm openly revealing on social media now and in front of a camera. I'm on holidays for the month of August, so I'm going to be offline completely as well. So there will be no Shelf Analysis for the month of August. However, it will be back in September. Same thing, live Wednesday nights. And we already have guests lined up for September. We've got some cracking guests lined up for September that you're not going to want to miss. And a few I'm chasing as well that I'm working on. So it's back September. Last one is going to be next week on a Wednesday. And it's nice. We've got a good one to go out with a bang next Wednesday night. Right, where am I going to go? What am I going to start with tonight? First things first. Stuff that's come up. Yes, sorry, post. That's arrived in over the last few days. I would say the last week, but the nice gentleman who does the post in RTE knocked on the door of my studio this morning because he sees me with the big window now, and he just goes, and to be fair, he hands me in all my bits and pieces. So this morning he gave me this, which has been coming for quite some time and knocking around. This is John Boyne's brand new one, out in a few days, I think, called A Traveller at the Gates of Wisdom. That's been knocking around, been waiting for that for quite some time. That is there. This is really interesting looking in that I knew nothing pretty much about this guy. The book is called, where have I got? Yeah, again, I have the same problem everybody else does. It's Rian Amilcar Scott's The World Doesn't Require You. It's a second collection of short stories. He's an American author based in the same fictional city, but based in different times, and all of them to do with this city, which is the first place in the United States, this fictional city in which there was a slave uprising. And the first book was really well reviewed. So was this one. This is the Ireland and UK version of it, which is going to be coming out soon as well. I really like the look of that. And arriving today, if you, like myself, have been a habitual watcher of Pointless over the years, you would have been thrilled to have seen that Richard Osman is writing a book, and it's called The Thursday Murder Club. Yes, it seems like it's a cozy crime book. We're allowed to say cozy crime, right? I'll ask actually my author in a minute. She'll be able to define anything I need. Cozy crime. It's called The Thursday Murder Club. It is by Richard Osman. All you need to know is that Ian Rankin has written the blurb for it, and Val McDermid, and Kate Atkinson, and Marion Keyes has written one too, and Adam Kay as well. And I like Richard Osman, so I'm perfectly willing to give that a crack. That's all the stuff that's arrived over the last day or two as well. Briefly, where are we going? To Karina. Karina, the show's houseplant, is reading a brand new book every week. It's what Karina's reading. Who knows? Who can tell? Last week she had the dogs in the background. She won't this week. Oh, Karina has either got a brand new hairstyle or has got a friend. Hi, Karina. Karina seems to be with one of our other houseplants. I mean, I wish I knew the name of the houseplant. There's lots of plants all around the house. They all allegedly have names, and I have no sense of anything. Hi, Karina. How are you? You've found a friend after all this time. It's taken 36 episodes. It's been a while. You seem very happy. Okay. And Sayaka Murata's Earthlings in there as well, which looks like it's been read a fair amount all the way through. I very much enjoyed Convenience Store Woman. And for those people who read that, this one is due out over the course of the next few weeks as well. I know we talked about it very briefly last week. Thanks, Karina. Enjoying it? Good? Happy? Getting distracted from the reading? Yeah. Thought as much. Thanks. This week's guest on the program, it's quite nice to get somebody just before a book has come out. We've talked to so many authors over the course of the series because we started back in March at a point when people had books that were due to come out. Those books did not come out. Those books were then postponed. Books were knocked around. Dates were changed. I know of one Irish author who had a book that was due to come out that is not now coming out until March of next year. But it's lovely to finally now be in a position, as we will be in September as well, to get to talk to authors whose books are just about to come out, the brand new ones, and you get to find out a little bit about those before they come out. I have loads of other stuff to talk to her about as well, I mean, including Lego. So my guest tonight, if I go 3, 2, 1, should be Catherine Ryan Howard.
Hello,
Catherine. How are you?
I'm very good. Very good. Thank you.
You're putting on this air of being entirely unflappable and being perfectly ready and together. You just arrived back home today, didn't you? You were away for a few days.
Yeah, I was down in Cork. That was my staycation down at my parents' house. So, really, it was so my parents could come up here and stay in my apartment, and that was more their staycation. So we drove back up this morning. I'm sort of moving between apartments at the moment, so I won't show you, but I will put on Instagram later the actual scene here behind me, because it's not as neat and lovely as it looks in the background. I'm surrounded by boxes, but
you have framed yourself magnificently, because it looks,
I really have.
The effort that's gone into
not
making
my first rodeo, Rick.
I understand that completely. Let's scroll back a little bit. Okay, so how has the last few months treated you? I mean, like personally, but as a writer as well.
Lockdown was really interesting for me. So it was kind of like a game of two halves. In the first part, the 1st of May, I would say, when they gave us the plan for reopening, I was one of those insufferable people, no kids, no roommates, no like elderly at-risk relatives to worry about. I was like, this is actually good. I'm going to be able to read all the books. I'm going to be able to watch all the shows, and I'm going to be able to get my first draft done. And so initially for me, it was kind of a novelty. Like, it sounds absolutely terrible to say, but you're telling me I have to cancel all social plans and stay at home. Like, I volunteer. So that was fine. But then I think when they announced the reopening plan, I couldn't go like day by day anymore. I knew how long it was going to last. I hadn't seen my family because they live in Cork and I'm in Dublin. My apartment, I lived in the world's smallest apartment, and people think I'm making it up, but 35 square meters and no like private outside space, really, really small. For 6 years, I loved it. It was great. And then it turns out that was because I was never there. And when I was there for months on end, I just started to go mental. So during the first week of phase 1 reopening, I moved apartments. And so that's how I was personally, but writing wise, I actually shelved the book that I had been writing because it was involving like something happening in a nightclub and international travel and crowds and, licking strangers' faces and all that fun stuff we do before lockdown. So I daren't say it, but I'm at the moment writing a novel that takes place during lockdown. So I don't want to call it a lockdown novel. No one has coronavirus, but my books are always set in the time that I'm writing them, and I always try and make them as realistic as possible. I don't see how we can just ignore this as an event. So we'll see how it goes. But it changed a lot for me, apartment and book. So
because I would presume that particularly for a crime author, as you said, maybe the constraints that would be placed around your characters in a situation like this, that it might be quite interesting as a writer to see how all of that goes. And the only other person I've spoken to over the course of all of this time, and I think it wasn't for here, it was for the book show on Radio 1, was Michael Connolly, who said
my God amongst men. I love him.
And a lovely guy to talk to, and he was exceptional. But he said that he had just finished a book, and he said what I had to do was scroll everything back by about 6 months, because the book that I was writing would have made no sense had it happened at some point in 2020. So everybody I've talked to as well, and I'm sure people are doing it, you're the only one who's either brave or foolish enough to say, I'm actually having a crack at this.
It's such a risky business, but we'll just see how it goes. I had this idea for 2 people meeting and things not being quite what they seem. And I never had like a plot to go with it. And then the Deputy Health Minister in the UK said something about new couples. They either had to break up or move in together, even if they'd only known each other, a few days, because the alternative was not to see each other during lockdown. And that just got the wheels turning. I don't want to go back and write another novel set in 2019. I kind of do like one a year. And I think you're crazy to jump into 2021, because imagine, trying to think of what this year turned out to be 12 months ago. I think that's an even riskier business. So look, I think what people want is they want a really good book and a really good story. And whether or not that mentions lockdown or not, I don't think that's as important as writing a good book or reading a good book. So that's the game I'll be playing for the next 12 months.
And that's a thrilling tightrope act. And I think that's
certainly is. That's why I'm drinking the rose there.
Oh, finally, thank God we can break out the beer. Fair enough.
Thanks,
so
Graham
then,
Norton.
is that what it is? Is that a Graham Norton based booze?
Yeah, my BFF Graham, don't know him at all, but yeah.
You'd be surprised. He knows a lot about a lot of Irish authors, whether or not those Irish authors.
I hope he knows about me.
You'd be surprised.
Both Corkonians. I mean, come on, like. I hope he does.
Tell me as well, before I move on to what I was about to move on to, I follow you on Twitter, but on Instagram, you're far more interesting on Instagram, let's be honest. There's a lot of cool stuff happening there. And you went home this week, just gone, and you were showing a load of the bits and pieces that you found in your parents' house, including, you worked in Walt Disney World, right? And you have this immense scrapbook of everything that kind of you did while you were there. It was like, working my way through whatever it was, your 20s, and just sitting and watching it scroll by in a photo.
Yeah, RIP my 20s. I worked in Walt Disney World for a year and a half. I actually wrote a book about it. That was my first self-published book, Mousetrapped. That was what I did to afford the ink cartridges and coffee that I needed to write my novels. And I always say straight up, I was not dressed up as anything. I was not a character. I was an agent a front desk agent in a hotel next to Epcot. And it was just such a fantastic time because I was totally underprepared. I'd never even been to Florida. I just packed a bag and I went. I was used to working abroad. I did a lot of like seasonal work abroad and campsites and stuff like that. And it was better that I didn't know what I was getting into. But while I was there, I just, had so many amazing experiences, including realizing my dream of getting to see a space shuttle launch from Cape Canaveral.
No, don't, because the one thing that happened when I was looking through your Instagram story the other day was seeing you looking at a space shuttle launch, which obviously is something I can never do because they don't exist anymore.
And I just got to do it. And I thought that, this is something I wanted to do since I was about 8 or 9. And I thought, this is not possible because it's not the kind of thing where, okay, there's a shuttle launch, you book a holiday to Orlando or whatever, because they're always scrubbed, they're always postponed. And then randomly, I ended up living an hour's drive from the Cape, as the cool kids call it. So I was out there every week. I had an annual pass, which is called a commander's pass. And I was just out there as much as possible and falling deeply in love with Apollo, because I was always a space shuttle girl before I went, and because it was my dream to see that launch. But really, Apollo is where it's at. Space shuttle is kind of a bus, but I did get to see a launch finally, STS-120. It was Discovery, and randomly, one of the astronauts on board was Dan Tanney, who was hitching a lift to the ISS, and he's married to a Cork woman, which I only found out afterwards when I came home, and I got to meet him at Black Rock Castle Observatory. So it was just amazing. You can't tell in the picture of me that ended up on the front cover of a local newspaper, but I was just bawling. I was bawling because it was so emotional. It really was.
The weirdest thing about this is it is the smallest possible world, because I've interviewed 2 astronauts, one of whom is Dan Tanney.
No way!
Again, when he was here, he's here all the time practically because he's married to an Irish woman.
And apparently he likes to golf down in Kinsale. That was the other, I think you mentioned, that's why he was there. Yeah, so I met Dan Tanney, and also another amazing moment in my life, I got to meet Charlie Duke, who walked on the moon. And I just think I have a framed and signed picture of him back here somewhere. So I was really lucky. And that's why there is also, I'm addicted to stationery. So while I was in Disney, I was in Orlando, I was going to this craft store every week and buying scrapbooking stuff, but never doing the scrapbook. And then I came home with it all and just sat down and just tried to preserve this amazingly fun time in my life, because it was so much fun. It is like Neverland, because there's no one there doing any adulting whatsoever. Like you just go to work, you go to the parks, you have fun. It was fantastic. It really was.
It's one of the things I love about these programs as well, is that in theory we're supposed to be talking about books. We haven't even talked about your new book yet, or the books you're going to recommend. We spent all this time talking about Disney in space, which is
but that's how I started writing, in a way, because that's how I started my career, because that led to writing Mousetrapped, and that led to doing like workshops and stuff about self-publishing and getting a job with a publisher, and that led to me being able to write a novel, like, because I wasn't slogging away at a 9-to-5 that was crushing my soul. And that led to where I am today. So I do think Disney had actually is the beginning in many ways of the story of my career.
Yeah. Hang on, before we even get into any of this, I got the comments already. Catherine says, I was stalking Catherine for her bookcase details on Instagram. Fascinated by what she might come up with set in lockdown. Love Rewind. It's so creepy. I have the new book pre-ordered. It sounds brilliant. Emily says, Nothing Man sounds brilliant. Looking forward to reading it. Stephanie says, my pre-ordered The Nothing Man delivery is getting closer. I'm so looking forward to reading it. There's a lot of that going on.
Great.
Before I get to The Nothing Man, briefly, maybe tell me about Rewind, because you've just sold the telly rights.
Yes. So Rewind was my book that came out basically this time last year. And I got a very exciting email a few months ago, because you're not allowed to tell anyone about these things until like months later. But Clerkenwell, who made Lovesick, The End of the Beeping World, and Misfits, among other things, have optioned it. They are hoping to go to a streamer with it, because Rewind, the whole idea of the story is that it's set up like a videotape that you start watching in the middle. And I'm very interested in like structure and form and stuff, which is going to feed into my book choices. But you turn the page and there's like a pause symbol, and there's, later on there's fast forward, rewind. So it's completely out of order. And it's only until you get to the end that you know the whole story, and they want to take advantage of that. So it's really exciting, because like I've been down this road before and nothing came of it. But this is already a lot further along. This is the craziest sentence that has ever come out of my mouth, but there's 2 writers working on the first 3 episodes, or, whatever. Like, writers are working to adapt the book right now. And that is a lot further than I ever got with the previous option in much longer of time. So I often explain TV rights as having a ticket for the lotto. Like, you might win because you have a ticket, but the chances of it actually ending up on screen are about as good. But this seems like I have maybe lots of tickets, and maybe, some of the numbers as well. So we'll see. We'll see. But it's just so exciting, because you never think about that. Like, I certainly don't think about that. I try and write books that work best as books, because I'm really interested in the medium. Like, I don't want to tell a story that's ready-made on a platter for the screen. Like, it's books I want to create. And so when someone comes along and says, we see a way to tell this on screen and make something new out of it, which in turn will send more people to my book, I just think that is fantastic. So that was a very nice email to get.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Okay, we're going to move on to your new book, which is, as I said, perfect timing. Nice to talk about it. Tell me a little bit about the new book, about The Nothing Man.
So The Nothing Man was, I hate to use the word inspired, because inspired is a positive word. I will say I got the idea when I was reading Michelle McNamara's I'll Be Gone in the Dark. So that is about the Golden State Killer who, like, I think 20 or 30 years after he last committed his last crime, he was arrested and identified. She didn't know that. She passed away during the writing of the book. So I read her book a week after he'd been arrested. So I'm able to solve the mysteries in the book. I can answer the questions. And when she says, I think he's X, Y, and Z, I know she's right. Mm-hmm. But it was a #1 New York Times bestseller. It had loads of publicity. It's currently airing as a HBO documentary. And he was out, he was free, and he was still living in the place where the crimes occurred. I know this is not a brief description, but there was a 2-month period when he could have read that book. Mm-hmm. And I just became obsessed with the idea of him reading the book. Did he? If he did, what did he think? If Michelle had lived, would he have been nervous? Would he have seen her as a threat? Was he, like me and my scrapbook, sort of reliving past glories? Was Did he feel shame? Like, I just couldn't get the idea out of my head. And I've never found confirmation of this, but I'm absolutely convinced that I saw an interview with Edna O'Brien years ago where she was talking about In the Forest, which is her novel based on a real case. And she said, I write as a way to grieve for what I read in the headlines. And what I do is I write to answer the questions that real life, poses in the headlines, but can't answer for me. So to sort of satisfy my own curiosity at the end of this 5-minute explanation, I wrote a book that is half a fictional true crime book. It has its own copyright page, title page. It's in a different font and everything, by Eve Black, who is one of the Nothing Man survivors. And even on those pages, it says Eve Black in the running head, and half the killer's reaction to it as he reads. So both you, the reader, and the killer are reading the book about him at the same time. Ta-da!
And that is out when? Remind me, it's out
week after? 6th of August. So it was due out later, but it's coming out now on the 6th of August, and it's the 4th of August in the States.
Okay, let's move on to allegedly why we're here, which is the coat hanger I hang all of this on, and which is the nonsense that this show is made up of, which is books that you would like to recommend to people. For those people who maybe haven't seen the program before, there are no criteria. They can be anything from from books that are from 2,000 years ago to something you're reading in proof right now that isn't out for the general public as of yet, and anything you fancy. So how many have you got, and what have you got?
I've got 5. Okay. So, and I made my own theme, actually, Rick.
Okay.
So I haven't done any proofs because I think it's really annoying when you're like, oh my God, this book is amazing. And it's out in October of next year. Yeah. So these books are all available now. I'm a crime writer, yes, but first and foremost, I am a crime reader. I've been a fan of crime fiction since I was like 12 or 13, and I love it. But I am on a mission in life to show people that crime encompasses crime fiction, I should say. Just assume I always mean crime fiction and not actually committing crimes.
I can if you want me to. Okay.
Crime as a genre encompasses so many different types of books. So my 5 choices, 4 of them really, one of them is a bit tenuous, but in general, they depict all the different things that the crime umbrella covers, and I highly recommend them as a way to sort of explore your way around the genre outside of the standard, police procedural or serial killer thriller.
Okay.
So I have to apologize for the first book because ironically I took the dust jacket off to protect it from suntan lotion. I'm doing the wrong way. And then I left the dust jacket in Cork. So sorry about that. It's They All Fall Down by Rachel Hosell Hall. I am making a concerted effort to read more books by authors who don't look like me. That is easy to do in crime. There's no excuse for not doing it. I know a lot of people say, I don't think about an author's gender. I don't think about an author's race. But that's actually the point. That's the problem. It's an unconscious bias, and you have to make conscious moves to make sure you're not doing it. So They All Fall Down by Rachel Hosell Hall. It's essentially Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None, but in a beautiful tropical island off the coast of Mexico, in a stunning mansion filled with horrible people. She acknowledges, there's even a quote from And Then There Were None at the beginning, and she knows exactly what she's doing. I love it because it's exactly the kind of thriller that I like. It's smart, it's funny, it's actually hilarious, even though people are dying. I'm always told to take the jokes out of my books because people are dying, but I highly, highly recommend it. It's so perfect for, I think beach reads are a brilliant thing. I want a book that glues me to my sun lounger for hours on end. And this is just, not that we'll be on sun loungers this summer, but you know what I mean, at the garden. This is fantastic. So I apologize that I don't have the lovely cover. And also I fear this is an import. I'm not sure it has a UK publisher, but it is well worth. Bob and the Gutter will get you any book you want. It is well worth hunting it down because it's a fantastic book. So that's They All Fall Down. I keep going the wrong way. All Fall Down by Rachel Hosell Hall. Book number 1.
Every single author who's been on this, it's the weirdness of the filming thing, and you're not quite sure which way the books go. Great. Okay, what's number 2?
Okay, so the next book, and this is crime. I will argue it, because crime is not just true crime. Is not just murder and other horrible things. I love a good heist. I love a good white-collar crime, especially if it's connected to a tech company. They're my favorites. So I am recommending Flash Crash by Liam Vaughan. So do I have the capacity to really explain what this book is about? I'm not sure.
There's only one way to find out.
Yeah, I would say that you don't have to have any interest in finances or the stock market or anything. What this story is about is an underdog who kind of got a bit too powerful and caused what's called a flash crash. So it happened, I think it was May 2010. Yes, May 2010, when 70 billion, really should have checked this beforehand. Sorry, $1 trillion was wiped off. The value worth $1 trillion was wiped off the stock markets worldwide, but came back like half an hour later. And no one could figure out what had happened. At the beginning of this book, FBI agents, Met agents, sort of DEA agents, they're breaking into a house in Hounslow, which, if you've ever gotten the tube from Heathrow into London, is like basically the end of the line. And they're going into a man who's living like in his childhood bedroom in his parents' 3-bed semi, and he is responsible for the flash crash. He has no degrees. He never worked for like a major bank or anything like that. He caused worldwide chaos from his box room in a 3-bed semi. And this is the story of how that took place. And it reads like a thriller. It's so fascinating. It's really readable. It doesn't anticipate that you have any knowledge of the stock markets, which is just as well, because I don't. And if you like, The Big Short or Flash Boys or stuff like this, I think this is even easier to read, but it is so riveting. You will and nothing is black and white. There's no winners, no losers. You'll have to, take a good look at yourself to see who you side with in the story. But that is my second recommendation.
Sounds fantastic. Great. Okay. Where are we going after this?
Okay, so as I mentioned at the top, what I am interested in storytelling is form and structure. So novel means new. And I think that when you write a novel, you should be trying to do something new with it. And what I look for, the space I try and find the newness, is in structure and form. And so I'm always looking, I love a good standard police procedural that's the same as I read before, but different and really well written and fantastic and a great puzzle. But I love when I find a book that is pushing at the boundaries of what we would call the crime genre. So it's still identifiably a crime novel, but it is like nothing I've ever read before. This is just out. Nothing Can Hurt You by Nicola May Goldberg. I think it's stunning. So it's about a crime in the sense that a girl was murdered by her boyfriend, but that's not what this book is about. This book is a series of sort of vignettes of people who were in some way affected by the crime. Sometimes they were front row seat. Sometimes they were an incredibly tenuous link, but it is fantastic. It's haunting, it's experimental, and it's still a crime novel. Like, if I read a review of this, God help me, that says she transcends the genre, I will set fire to that newspaper, because we can do amazing things within the genre. We don't have to transcend it to write fantastic books. I would just highly recommend it. It is very fragmented. I've seen reviews online where, I think people were expecting a sort of standard linear story and didn't get it, and were maybe a bit disappointed with that. But if you go in with an open mind and you want something completely different but still crime, I would recommend this book. Nothing Can Hurt You, Nicola May Goldberg.
Do you think that can occasionally be a problem? I mean, because you attempt to do that yourself in some of your books, whereby there are people who do expect certain things from crime, certain types of crime book readers and fans, and that if you do wander outside of those lanes, that can be very dangerous waters.
Yes, especially if you're swimming through Goodreads. But yes, it is. Yeah, there's definitely a part of the readership that want the same but different. And, it really kind of makes me laugh and also cry when people say things like, oh, I hate crime books when they're in the first person, or I hate crime books when there's a prologue, or just these sort of arbitrary things that have absolutely nothing to do with the story. I can't think about that because I would go mad. The most important thing is for me to write books that I'm proud of. I believe that if I keep writing the kind of books I want to read, I will find readers. Because if I want to read those kind of books, I believe, I trust, and I increasingly think, I'm seeing it, that there are readers out there who are looking for that, who are looking for crime that we love, that crime fiction. I keep saying it as if we're like committing crime sprees, who are looking for what I'm looking for. And I just, the best advice I ever got was write the book you want to read but can't find on the shelf. And that's what I do. And I try not to worry about whether anyone else is looking for it on the shelf as well.
Yeah, because you're right. You can't do that. Okay, we've got 3 really great suggestions so far. So what are you going to do to bring this home? What's your last 2? What have you got?
Okay, so I'm doing it in like ascending order. So the best one is last.
Okay.
Okay, so this is another true crime. It's a very glossy cover.
Mm-hmm.
Give Me Everything You Have, subtitle On Being Stalked by James Lasden.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a personal history with this book because I went to college when I was 32, so only graduated 2 years ago. And for my final year project, I wrote about this book. I find this book levels of fascinating. So James Lasden is a very famous and well, what's the word I'm looking for? Like highly lauded British author. He's done short stories and novels and poetry. He writes for Granta, the London Review, and he also was a professor in a college in New York. And while he was there, he had a student in a creative writing class. Everything was fine. But a couple of years later, she emailed him asking him, would he look at her novel? And what began is, I suppose, a campaign. Like, I wouldn't call it stalking. I'm very up on my crimes, and I would say it's harassment, because it wasn't a physical thing. It was emails, it was Amazon reviews, it was emailing people who knew him, and things got really, really bad. But what Lasden did is, there's 2 interesting things about this book. Okay, the first is that what Lasden did in response to that experience. So literature is his life. Like, his whole life, that's his solace. So he turns to literature as a way of dealing with it. So he sort of views her behavior and his own predicament through the prism of literature, ranging from Sir Gawain and the Green Knight to Strangers on a Train. Like, it just a spectrum of literature. The other interesting thing, poor Lasden, but years before this happened, he wrote a novel called The Horned Man, where a British academic who had published fiction was working in New York and found himself at the wrong end of a campaign of harassment by a younger woman. And like, he wrote that novel before any of this happened. And what's really fascinating, and this is what my article that I wrote was about, what's fascinating is that the narrator in the novel is unreliable. Now, I don't want to cast any aspersions, but just as a sort of reading experience, to read this and to read The Horned Man and to see how they sort of engage with each other, even though they can't realistically, it's just a fascinating experience. And what's really terrifying about this book, you read about serial killers, you read about, people going missing. It's not going to happen to you. This started when someone sent someone else an email. And I just think it's a fascinating book, especially if you're at that intersection of loving true crime and loving literature. This is the book for you. Give Me Everything You Have by James Lasden.
That sounds amazing. All right, now what interests me is that you've given 4 really interesting sounding choices. You've now built up the 5th one, and you're going to have to. This is going to be awkward if it doesn't sound as exciting as the other 4. So
I think it does. So
okay.
Let's do it. First of all, I have to say thank you to the Company of Books in Ranelagh. A couple of years ago, Hazel Gaynor and myself did this independent bookshop crawl for Independent Bookshop Day or week or whatever it was. And I went into the Company of Books and I said, I want to buy a book, but I don't know what I want. Just pick out something and give it to me and I will take it. And they gave me You Should Have Left by Daniel Kellman, I guess it is. It's translated from the German by Ross Benjamin. It has a quote on the cover from Jonathan Franzen, but we won't hold that against it. Okay. So this has actually just been released as a movie starring Kevin Bacon. Don't watch it because apparently it's bad. But this is such a fantastic book. I picked this because it is the ideal lockdown book. I know a lot of people, and myself included, we just lost our ability to read books. I just completely lost my reading mojo. I think like I read 1-2 books during the entire lockdown. It's only in the last few weeks I've started reading again. This book is 100 tiny pages. You will easily read it in an hour. Yeah. It's about a writer who's had an incredibly success. We never find out his name. He's just a writer who's had a really successful movie he wrote the screenplay for, and now he has retreated to a house in the Alps, I think it is, to, again, I should have checked all this. Yes, it's the Alps, to write the sequel. And again, he's with his wife and daughter, and is it a daughter or a son? Yes, it's a daughter. So he goes to this.
You've got to trust yourself here. You know all
I know, but I keep double
You don't need to double check.
So they go to this isolated house, and I said I love experiments in form. So what this book is this is actually his notebook. You are reading the notebook he is keeping while he is in this house. So it starts off with like ideas, then there's a bit of journaling, then there's some excerpts from his screenplay, and then things start to go haywire. So the way I would describe it is The Shining, if The Shining book was Jack Torrance's notebook that he kept while he was there. And it's one of those books, if you've read, I think it's Ian Reid, I'm thinking of Ending Things. If you've read his book, you will like, this is very similar. You're not going to know what happened at the end. It's going to be up to you to decide. It ends mid-sentence. So brave. But it's just a fascinating book, and it's not going to be like anything you have read. And I also love books about writers. I just adore them because, you know, there's so many jokes that you're like, yeah, I feel that. So that is my final recommendation. And I would really put a star on this one for anyone who has been struggling to read lately, who is starting books and putting them down, and also who's going slightly crazy from being home all the time. This is the perfect book for you. You Should Have Left by Daniel Kalman. Don't watch the movie.
I'm going to scroll you back slightly because you were in such a great flow. Yeah, I'm going to scroll you back to the phrase independent bookshop crawl. So does that involve you going to loads of different bookshops and buying one book in each shop?
Yeah, so what we did, it was Hazel and myself, and I think my other bestie Carmel was off somewhere else with someone else. And we basically were like, we made a list of independent bookshops, and we had a day. We didn't realize until afterwards that it was the day of the Pride Parade, which made getting around the city centre even more fun. Yeah. But we brought them things. I remember there was Percy Pigs. There might have been proof copies or something like that. We brought them stuff, and then I just decided I was gonna, I'm not sure if I bought one in each shop, but if I didn't, that's what I should have done, because that was a great idea. But you don't get it in anything except independent bookshops to just walk in and say, hand me something. And I think that's a great way. Like, I would never have picked up that book because I hate Jonathan Franzen, but I would have been like, oh, if he likes it, I definitely won't. Yeah. But I took it, and also it's an adorable book. I love books as objects as well. Like, how cute. I mean, it's just so yeah, that's what it was.
I'm going to suggest that if anybody who's involved in the upper echelons of Irish book selling wants to create a day called, Bookshop Book Crawl Day, where everybody has to, go to a bunch of different bookshops and buy a book in each.
It was sanctioned. It was by, Books Are My Bag. So it was, I think it was just that they were encouraging people to go do it. But I think it is a great idea, especially when you end up then in somewhere like Dubray on Grafton Street at the end, and you can have some much needed caffeine and sit and look out the window. It was great fun. It was just not the great day to do it because we were legging it around town, not able to get close to anything. But it was a great day. Yeah, independent book.
This has been an absolute joy. I love the idea of those 5 books. They're absolutely super. I mean, I didn't even really get to have the long Lego conversation with you that we were going to do. We'd have to save that for a different location. I know we'll do it at another time.
This is the whole Lego story, Rick. I was in lockdown, I bought Lego. That's it. The end.
And on that note, Catherine Ryan Howard, thank you so much for having the chat tonight on Shelf Analysis. Thanks a million for joining us.
Thank you for having me, and cheers.
Cheers. And you, chin chin. Hang on, one more. Let's do a proper one. Okay. You're there, and yeah, good. Chin chin. There we go. Okay. Thanks, Catherine. See you. Good luck. Oh, am I supposed to? Well, I probably could. Come on. Come on. I mean, now the precedent has been set. That's it. If you missed any of the episode, you will be able to find it, of course, on the show's YouTube channel. Just go and look up Shelf Analysis or go and look up Ricochet on YouTube. You'll find it there. And all of the episodes will turn up as well in a couple of days' time on RTE Culture 2. Next Wednesday night, 8 o'clock, is the final Shelf Analysis before we take the brief summer break for the month of August. We're back again at the beginning of September. So until then, I'll see you next Wednesday night at 8 o'clock here in the Ricochet Book Club and on YouTube as well. See you then.